The notification sound from LinkedIn made my blood freeze. There, staring back at me from my laptop screen, was my own face attached to someone else's professional profile. My portfolio, my achievements, my 5 years of painstaking career building, all credited to Vanessa Hartwell, Creative Director at Pinnacle Digital Solutions. The position I'd been interviewing for just 2 weeks ago. The position they'd told me went to someone with more relevant experience. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. That someone was my sister, wearing my identity like a stolen coat. I'm Zoe Hartwell, 28 years old, and I'm a senior data analyst with a passion for creative strategy. This is the story of how my own flesh and blood nearly destroyed everything I'd worked for, and how one phone call to HR turned her dream job into the nightmare she deserved. The rain was drumming against my Pearl District loft windows that Thursday evening when I first discovered the betrayal. I'd been scrolling through industry updates, checking on competitors, when I stumbled across the announcement. Pinnacle Digital Solutions welcomes new creative director Vanessa Hartwell. The headshot was mine from last year's professional photo session. The bio described my exact educational background, my internship at CloudSync Technologies, even my award for most innovative data visualization from the Portland Marketing Association. Every single accomplishment that had taken me years to earn was now attributed to my younger sister. My hands shook as I clicked through the company's press release. There was Vanessa quoted as saying she was thrilled to bring fresh perspectives to digital storytelling. Fresh perspectives, I'd used those exact words in my cover letter to Pinnacle just weeks earlier. The same cover letter that had apparently been rejected in favor of this imposter. I reached for my phone, my finger hovering over Vanessa's contact. We hadn't spoken much since our parents' anniversary dinner 3 months ago, where she'd seemed unusually interested in my job search. She'd asked detailed questions about my portfolio, my interview strategies, even requested copies of my resume for inspiration. I'd been flattered by her sudden interest in my career, thinking maybe we were finally connecting as adults. How naive I'd been. Instead of calling her, I navigated to Pinnacle's website and found the company directory. Vanessa's photo smiled back at me from the leadership page, my photo, with her name underneath. The biography was a masterpiece of deception, weaving together my real experiences with fabricated details that painted her as the perfect candidate. She'd somehow obtained my portfolio pieces, my client testimonials, even references from colleagues who'd never heard her name. The audacity was breathtaking. This wasn't just sibling rivalry gone wrong, this was identity theft on a professional scale, and it was happening at the company where I'd dreamed of working since graduating from Portland State. I poured myself a glass of wine and tried to process the magnitude of what I was seeing. Vanessa had always been the golden child in our family, the one who coasted through school on charm and last-minute cramming while I spent nights in the library perfecting my craft. She dropped out of college after 2 years, claiming traditional education wasn't for creative minds like hers. Our parents had supported her decision, funding her various artistic pursuits while I worked part-time jobs to pay for my degree. But this was different. This wasn't about family dynamics or parental favoritism. This was theft, plain and simple, and it was about to cost her everything. I grabbed my laptop and began documenting everything. Screenshots of the LinkedIn profile, the company announcement, the fabricated portfolio pieces that belonged to me. I saved copies of my original work files, complete with metadata showing creation dates that predated Vanessa's supposed employment at Pinnacle by years. I compiled a folder of emails with clients praising my work, awards certificates with my name on them, and performance reviews from CloudSync that detailed my exact responsibilities and achievements. As I worked, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "So proud of Vanessa. Did you see she got that big job she wanted? Maybe you could ask her for advice about your career." The irony was suffocating. Ask her for advice about the career she'd stolen from me. I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on a simple, "Thanks, I'll look into it." There would be time to explain everything to my parents later. Right now, I had more pressing concerns. I opened a new browser window and began researching Marcus Rodriguez, Pinnacle's head of human resources. His LinkedIn profile showed 15 years in HR management, with a focus on compliance and risk mitigation. He posted several articles about the importance of thorough background checks and maintaining ethical hiring practices. This was exactly the kind of person who would take identity theft seriously. But I needed more than just accusations. I needed proof that would be impossible to dismiss or explain away. I needed to be strategic about this, professional and measured. One wrong move and Vanessa could claim this was just a misunderstanding between sisters, a case of borrowed credentials that got out of hand. I spent the next 3 hours building an airtight case. I cross-referenced the dates on Vanessa's supposed project completions with my own work timeline, highlighting the impossibility of her claims. I gathered testimonials from clients who'd worked directly with me, not some phantom creative director. Most importantly, I compiled digital forensic evidence, showing the creation dates and revision histories of every piece in my portfolio. The portfolio was particularly damning. Vanessa had somehow gotten her hands on my files, but she'd been sloppy about covering her tracks. The metadata still showed my computer as the original source, my software licenses for the design programs she claimed to use, even my unique creative watermarks embedded in the files. It was amateur hour deception dressed up in professional clothing. As dawn broke over the Portland skyline, I finally had everything I needed. A comprehensive dossier that would expose Vanessa's deception beyond any reasonable doubt. But I wasn't ready to make my move yet. I needed to understand exactly how deep this went, how she'd managed to fool Pinnacle's hiring team, and what other lies she might have told. I called in sick to CloudSync and spent the day conducting reconnaissance. I drove to Pinnacle's downtown offices, a sleek glass tower that housed some of Portland's most innovative companies. From the parking garage across the street, I watched employees coming and going, wondering if any of them had worked with my stolen identity over the past 2 weeks. My phone rang around noon. Tyler Nash, my former colleague and closest friend in the industry, was calling from his new position at Meridian Creative. "Zoe, I just saw the weirdest thing. There's this announcement about your sister joining Pinnacle, but they're using your portfolio pieces. Did you guys collaborate on something?" Tyler had worked with me for 3 years at CloudSync. He knew my work better than almost anyone, could probably identify my design style from across a room. If he was confused, other industry professionals would be too. This deception had an expiration date, and when it expired, the fallout would be spectacular. "It's complicated," I told him, "but I'm handling it." "Zoe, this looks really bad. Like identity theft bad. If she's claiming credit for your work, you need to do something about it fast. The longer this goes on, the harder it'll be to prove what really happened." He was right, of course. Every day Vanessa spent in that office, every meeting she attended using my credentials, every decision she made while wearing my professional identity, would make the eventual reckoning more complex. But I wanted to catch her in more than just the initial deception. I wanted to expose the full scope of what she was willing to do to maintain this charade.
Oh!
That afternoon, I created a fake LinkedIn profile using a stock photo and a generic marketing background. I reached out to several Pinnacle employees, expressing interest in their recent creative director hire, and asking about her innovative approach to data visualization. The responses were telling. Vanessa had been claiming credit for methodologies I'd developed, taking ownership of client success stories that predated her supposed career by years. One response particularly caught my attention. A junior designer at Pinnacle mentioned that Vanessa had promised to teach the team my proprietary data analysis techniques in an upcoming workshop. She was planning to present my methods as her own innovations, potentially stealing not just my past work but my future opportunities as well. The workshop was scheduled for the following Monday. 4 days away. Vanessa would be standing in front of Pinnacle's entire creative team, teaching them techniques she'd never actually learned, answering questions about processes she'd never actually performed. It would be the perfect moment for her house of cards to collapse, but only if I played this exactly right. I spent Friday evening crafting the perfect email to Marcus Rodriguez. Professional, detailed, and backed by irrefutable evidence. I outlined the identity theft, provided links to the documented proof, and requested an immediate investigation. I made it clear that this wasn't a family dispute, but a serious case of professional fraud that put Pinnacle at legal and reputational risk. But I didn't send it yet. Instead, I scheduled it for Monday morning at 8 a.m., exactly 2 hours before Vanessa's planned workshop. I wanted her to have the weekend to settle into her stolen role, to get comfortable with the lie, to maybe even start believing it herself. Saturday morning brought an unexpected text from Vanessa. Hey sis, heard you're still job hunting. I might have some connections now that I'm at Pinnacle. Coffee sometime. The audacity was staggering. She was offering to help me find a job using the professional network she'd built with my stolen identity. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to comprehend the level of delusion it represented. Did she really think I wouldn't find out? Did she believe her own lies so completely that she'd forgotten where her supposed qualifications had come from? I replied with calculated casualness. That's so generous. I'd love to hear about your new role. Riverside Roasters at 2 p.m. She agreed immediately, probably excited to show off her newfound success. I spent the rest of Saturday preparing for what would be the most important performance of my life. I needed to seem genuinely interested in her achievements, supportive enough that she'd reveal more details about her deception, but not so knowledgeable that she'd suspect I'd already discovered the truth. Sunday dragged by like a death sentence. I cleaned my apartment, organized my evidence files one more time, and tried to imagine how this would all play out.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
By tomorrow evening, Vanessa's career at Pinnacle would be over. By Tuesday, she'd probably be facing legal consequences. By next week, everyone in our professional circle would know what she'd done. The thought should have felt satisfying, but instead it felt hollow. This wasn't just about justice or protecting my reputation. This was about my sister, the person who'd shared my childhood, who'd been my maid of honor at my college graduation, who'd once helped me move apartments during a thunderstorm without complaint. But then I remembered Tyler's words about how identity theft worked. Every day Vanessa spent in that role, every client meeting she attended, every strategy session she led using my stolen credentials, would make it harder to repair the damage to my reputation. She wasn't just stealing a job, she was stealing my future in this industry. My phone buzzed with another LinkedIn notification. Someone from Pinnacle had shared an article about innovative data visualization techniques, tagging Vanessa as the inspiration for their new approach. My techniques, my innovations, now being shared across the industry with her name attached. The final piece of evidence had just fallen into place. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Riverside Roasters was bustling with the usual Saturday afternoon crowd. When I arrived 15 minutes early, I chose a corner table with a clear view of the entrance, positioned so I could observe Vanessa's body language from the moment she walked in. My laptop bag sat beside me, containing printed copies of everything I'd discovered, though I had no intention of revealing my hand during this conversation. Vanessa breezed through the door at exactly 2 o'clock, and I barely recognized her. Gone was the casual bohemian style she'd cultivated since dropping out of college. Instead, she wore a tailored blazer, designer jeans, and carried a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her hair was styled in a sleek bob, and she walked with the confident stride of someone who belonged in corporate boardrooms. Zoe, she embraced me with theatrical enthusiasm, as if we were long-lost friends, rather than sisters who'd grown apart over the years. You look great. How's the job search going? The question stung, but I maintained my composure, still exploring options. But enough about me, I want to hear everything about this amazing new position. Creative Director at Pinnacle Digital Solutions sounds incredible. Her eyes lit up with genuine excitement, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for what was about to happen to her. It really is a dream come true. The team is so talented, and Marcus Rodriguez, the HR director, said my portfolio was exactly what they'd been looking for. Apparently, my approach to data visualization really impressed Diana Blackwood, the CEO. My approach to data visualization, my portfolio. My techniques impressing a CEO I'd never even met. I nodded encouragingly while mentally cataloging each stolen detail. That's fantastic. I'd love to see some of the work you'll be doing there. Vanessa opened her portfolio with flourish, spreading out printed versions of my designs across the small cafe table. These are some of the pieces that got me the job. This campaign increased client engagement by 43%, and this data visualization strategy completely revolutionized how we approached market analysis. I stared at my own work, being presented back to me with such conviction that I wondered if Vanessa had somehow convinced herself she'd actually created these pieces. The campaign she mentioned had been my breakthrough project at CloudSync, the one that had earned me recognition throughout the Portland marketing community. The data visualization strategy was something I developed over months of trial and error, refining it until it became my signature approach. These are really impressive. I managed picking up one of the printed designs. It was an infographic I'd created for a local nonprofit, complete with my subtle watermark in the bottom corner that Vanessa had apparently overlooked. How did you develop this particular style? She leaned back in her chair, launching into a detailed explanation of creative processes she'd never experienced. She described late nights, perfecting color schemes, client meetings where she'd defended bold design choices, even the software tutorials she'd supposedly completed to master the technical aspects. Every word was fiction, but she delivered it with such passionate detail that I found myself almost admiring her commitment to the deception. The best part, she continued, is that I'm presenting a workshop to the whole creative team on Monday. I'll be teaching them some advanced techniques that I've developed over the years. Marcus specifically asked me to share my proprietary methods with the junior designers. My proprietary methods, the techniques I'd spent years perfecting, that I'd planned to showcase at industry conferences, were about to be taught by my sister to a room full of professionals who would forever associate them with her name. That sounds like a huge responsibility, I said carefully. What if someone asks really technical questions about the implementation? Vanessa waved her hand dismissively. Please, I've been doing this for years. Besides, confidence is half the battle in these situations. Most people are too intimidated to challenge someone in a leadership position. The casual arrogance of that statement crystallized everything I needed to know. She wasn't just stealing my work, she was counting on intimidation and corporate hierarchy to protect her from scrutiny. She believed her new title would insulate her from the kind of detailed questioning that would expose her ignorance. Have you had a chance to work on any actual projects yet? I asked. Well, I'm still in my first week, so mostly it's been orientation meetings and getting familiar with their current clients. But Diana has already hinted at putting me on the Morrison account. It's a huge retail client that needs a complete digital strategy overhaul. Morrison Industries. I'd actually pitched them directly 6 months ago, before their account went to a larger firm. They were exactly the kind of client who would expect detailed technical knowledge and hands-on implementation. If Vanessa tried to handle that account using stolen credentials and borrowed expertise, the deception would unravel within days. That's exciting. I'm sure you'll do great. I paused, pretending to consider something. You know, I actually have some experience with retail digital strategy. Maybe I could help brainstorm ideas if you ever want a second opinion. The offer seemed to relax her further. That would be amazing. I mean, I have tons of ideas already, but it's always good to get input from family. Plus, it might be good practice for you, considering you're still looking for work in the field. Still looking for work in the field. She was offering me the chance to contribute to projects in my own area of expertise, using my own stolen portfolio as qualification, while positioning herself as the mentor doing me a favor. The psychological manipulation was almost impressive in its audacity. We spent another hour discussing her fabricated career trajectory, her fictional accomplishments, and her plans for revolutionizing Pinnacle's creative approach. With each lie, I felt my resolve strengthening. This wasn't just about a stolen job anymore. This was about someone who was so comfortable with deception that she could look her own sister in the eye and construct an elaborate fantasy without a trace of guilt. As we prepared to leave, Vanessa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm really glad we're reconnecting, Zoe. I know we've grown apart over the years, but maybe my success at Pinnacle can help both of us.
Families should support each other, right? Absolutely, I replied, meaning it in ways she couldn't possibly understand. That evening, I made final preparations for Monday morning. I printed additional copies of my evidence, organized everything into a comprehensive presentation folder, and drafted a follow-up email to Marcus Rodriguez that would be sent automatically after our meeting. I wanted everything documented, time-stamped, and irrefutable. I also spent time researching Pinnacle's corporate policies regarding fraud and misrepresentation. Their employee handbook, available on their website, was very clear about the consequences of providing false information during the hiring process. Immediate termination, potential legal action, and permanent blacklisting from future employment opportunities.
Vanessa had signed agreements acknowledging these policies when she accepted the position. Sunday passed in a haze of anticipation and preparation. I rehearsed my presentation to Marcus Rodriguez, anticipating potential questions and ensuring I could demonstrate the authenticity of my work beyond any doubt. I also prepared for the possibility that Vanessa might try to claim this was some kind of misunderstanding, that she'd been given permission to use my portfolio, or that we'd collaborated on the projects in question. The evidence would speak for itself, but I needed to be ready for whatever story she might construct in her defense. Monday morning arrived with typical Portland drizzle, the kind of steady rain that seemed to wash the city clean. I dressed professionally but not ostentatiously, choosing an outfit that conveyed competence and credibility. This wasn't about making a fashion statement, it was about being taken seriously by people who made important decisions about careers and reputations. At exactly 8 o'clock, I sent my carefully crafted email to Marcus Rodriguez. The subject line was direct, urgent identity theft and fraudulent credentials, Vanessa Hartwell. The message outlined the situation professionally, referenced the attached evidence, and requested an immediate meeting to discuss the matter. I emphasized the legal and reputational risks to Pinnacle, the upcoming workshop where the fraud would be publicly displayed, and the need for swift action to protect the company's interests. By 8:15, my phone was ringing. Marcus Rodriguez's voice was calm but concerned. "Miss Hartwell, I received your email and I've had a chance to review some of the materials you sent. This is obviously a very serious allegation. Would it be possible for you to come in this morning so we can discuss this matter in detail?" "I can be there within the hour," I replied. "Perfect. I'm also going to ask our legal counsel to join us, given the potential implications of what you're alleging. I hope you understand that we need to handle this matter very carefully." Of course they did. A company like Pinnacle couldn't afford to have employees with fraudulent credentials, especially not in leadership positions. The liability issues alone would be staggering if clients discovered they'd been working with someone who'd misrepresented their qualifications. But they also couldn't afford to wrongly accuse an employee based solely on allegations from a family member. I arrived at Pinnacle's offices 45 minutes later, my evidence folder in hand and my confidence steady. The reception area was modern and minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the Willamette River. This was exactly the kind of environment I'd envisioned working in, the kind of place where creativity and innovation were valued and rewarded. Marcus Rodriguez met me in the lobby personally, which suggested he was taking this matter very seriously. He was younger than I'd expected, probably in his early 40s, with an air of professional competence that immediately put me at ease. We rode the elevator to the 20th floor, in relative silence, though I could sense him studying me, probably trying to assess whether I was a credible witness or a disgruntled family member with an agenda. The conference room he led me to was spacious and well-appointed, with a large oval table and state-of-the-art presentation equipment. Already seated were two other people, a woman in her 50s, who introduced herself as Patricia Chen, Pinnacle's legal counsel, and a younger man named David Kim, who apparently handled background verification and compliance issues. "Hartwell," Marcus began once we were all seated. "I want to be very clear about the seriousness of what you're alleging. Identity theft, fraudulent credentials, misrepresentation during the hiring process, these are not just employment issues. They're potentially criminal matters. Before we proceed, I need to ask if you're certain about these accusations." I opened my evidence folder and spread the contents across the conference table. "I'm absolutely certain. Every piece of work in Vanessa's portfolio belongs to me. Every accomplishment on her resume is mine. Every client testimonial and professional reference relates to projects I completed, not her." Patricia Chen leaned forward, examining the printed materials. "Can you walk us through how you discovered this situation?" I explained the timeline, my interview with Pinnacle 2 weeks earlier, the rejection letter citing lack of relevant experience, the accidental discovery of Vanessa's LinkedIn profile using my photo and credentials. I showed them the metadata from my original files, the emails from clients praising work that Vanessa was now claiming credit for, the awards and certifications that proved my expertise in the field. David Kim was particularly interested in the technical evidence. "These creation dates are compelling," he said, examining the file properties on his laptop. "And you're saying Miss Vanessa Hartwell has never actually worked in digital marketing or data analysis? She dropped out of college after 2 years and has spent the last 6 years pursuing various artistic projects, none of them related to marketing or data analysis. She has no formal training in the software programs she claims to use, no experience with the methodologies she's presenting as her own innovations, and no legitimate claim to any of the accomplishments listed in her portfolio. Marcus Rodriguez was quiet for several minutes, reviewing the evidence with the thoroughness of someone who understood the implication. Finally, he looked up. Miss Hartwell, what outcome are you seeking here? What do you want us to do with this information? The question I'd been preparing for. I want the truth to be acknowledged. I want my work attributed correctly. And I want to ensure that other professionals in this industry aren't deceived by someone who has no qualifications for the position she's holding. Are you seeking employment with Pinnacle? Patricia Chen asked directly. I interviewed for the creative director position that Vanessa now holds. I was told the job went to someone with more relevant experience. Given what we now know about her qualifications, I think that decision should be reconsidered. The three Pinnacle executives exchanged glances. Marcus Rodriguez gathered the evidence materials into a neat stack. Miss Hartwell, we're going to need some time to investigate this matter thoroughly. We'll need to verify your claims independently, review Miss Vanessa Hartwell's application materials, and determine our next steps. In the meantime, I must ask that you keep this matter confidential while we conduct our investigation. Of course, but I should mention that Vanessa is scheduled to present a workshop to your creative team this morning, where she'll be teaching techniques she learned from stealing my work. The longer this goes on, the more people will be exposed to the deception. David Kim checked his watch. The workshop is scheduled for 10:30. We have about an hour to make a decision about how to handle this. Patricia Chen was already reaching for her phone. I'm going to have to recommend we postpone that workshop immediately. If even half of what Miss Hartwell is alleging is true, we cannot allow someone with fraudulent credentials to present themselves as an expert to our staff. Marcus Rodriguez nodded grimly. I'll call Vanessa now and let her know the workshop is being rescheduled due to an urgent client matter. That should buy us time to complete our investigation without alerting her to what's happening. As the meeting concluded, I felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. The wheels of justice were finally turning, but I knew this was just the beginning of what would likely be a complex and painful process for everyone involved. 2 hours later, I was back in my Pearl District loft when my phone rang. Tyler Nash was calling from Meridian Creative, excitement evident in his voice. Zoe, you're not going to believe what I just heard through the industry grapevine. Apparently someone at Pinnacle is being investigated for fraudulent credentials. Word is spreading that their new creative director might not be who she claims to be. The Portland marketing community was smaller than most people realized. News traveled fast, especially when it involved major firms like Pinnacle. By tomorrow, everyone would know that something was seriously wrong with Vanessa's appointment. That's interesting, I replied carefully, not wanting to reveal my involvement till Pinnacle had completed their official investigation. Zoe, please tell me you didn't have anything to do with this. I know you were upset about not getting that position, but if you've made accusations against your own sister, the concern in Tyler's voice was understandable. To outside observers, this might look like a vindictive family member sabotaging a sibling's career out of jealousy or spite. That's exactly why I'd been so careful to document everything, to build a case based on irrefutable evidence rather than accusations or speculation. Tyler, the truth has a way of revealing itself. That's all I'll say right now. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from my mother. Vanessa just called, very upset about some problems at her new job. She says there are people trying to sabotage her. Do you know anything about this? The text was followed immediately by another one from Vanessa herself. Emergency at work. Can't talk now, but someone is spreading lies about me. Family needs to stick together right now. The irony was overwhelming. After stealing my identity and my career prospects, she was now appealing for family loyalty to protect her from the consequences of her actions. She was positioning herself as the victim of some unnamed conspiracy rather than acknowledging what she'd actually done. I didn't respond to either message. There would be time for family conversations later, after Pinnacle had completed their investigation and the truth was officially established. Until then, I needed to let the evidence speak for itself. That afternoon brought the call I'd been expecting. Marcus Rodriguez's voice was formal and professional. Miss Hartwell, we've completed our initial investigation into the matter you brought to our attention this morning. Based on our findings, we'll be moving forward with immediate action regarding Miss Vanessa Hartwell's employment status. We'd like you to come in tomorrow morning to discuss the next steps, including the possibility of your candidacy for the creative director position.
The validation I'd been seeking for weeks finally delivered in a single phone call, but rather than feeling triumphant, I mostly felt exhausted. This hadn't been about revenge or getting back at my sister. This had been about protecting my professional reputation and ensuring that talent and hard work were rewarded appropriately. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, explaining the situation to my parents, dealing with Vanessa's inevitable confrontation, and navigating the delicate process of potentially accepting a position that had been vacated under such dramatic circumstances. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, I could sleep peacefully knowing that the truth had finally been acknowledged by the people who mattered most in my professional life. Tuesday morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of Pacific Northwest day that made Portland feel like the most beautiful city in the world. I dressed with particular care, choosing a navy blazer and matching skirt that conveyed both professionalism and confidence. Today would determine whether my reputation could be fully restored, or if the damage from Vanessa's deception would follow me indefinitely. The elevator ride to Pinnacle's 20th floor felt different this time. Yesterday I'd been a supplicant seeking justice. Today I was potentially their next creative director, invited to discuss terms and expectations. The shift in dynamics was subtle but unmistakable, evident in how the receptionist greeted me by name and immediately directed me to the executive conference room. Marcus Rodriguez was waiting with Diana Blackwood, Pinnacle's CEO, whom I was meeting for the first time. She was an imposing woman in her early 50s, with steel gray hair and penetrating blue eyes that seemed to assess everything and everyone with surgical precision. Her handshake was firm, her smile measured but genuine. "Miss Hartwell," she began without preamble, "I want to personally apologize for the circumstances that brought us to this point. Our hiring process is designed to prevent exactly this kind of deception, and the fact that it occurred reflects poorly on our due diligence procedures." I settled into the leather chair across from them, my portfolio case beside me. "I appreciate that, Miss Blackwood. I understand this situation has created complications for Pinnacle as well." "Indeed it has." She opened a folder containing what appeared to be Vanessa's personnel file. "After reviewing your evidence yesterday, we conducted our own investigation. We contacted the references your sister provided, interviewed the clients whose testimonials she included in her application, and examined the work samples she submitted. The results were conclusive." Marcus Rodriguez continued the explanation. "Every reference was either fabricated or obtained under false pretenses. The clients she claimed to have worked with had actually worked with you through CloudSync Technologies. The work samples were identical to pieces in your portfolio, down to metadata that proved they originated from your computer and software licenses." Diana Blackwood's expression hardened as she spoke. "We also discovered that your sister had created an elaborate online presence to support her deception. Fake LinkedIn recommendations, fabricated project descriptions, even a false employment history at companies that don't exist or couldn't verify her claimed positions. The scope of Vanessa's deception was more extensive than I'd realized. This hadn't been a spontaneous decision to steal my portfolio for one job application. She'd constructed an entire fictional professional identity, complete with fake references and non-existent work history. The level of premeditation was staggering. What happens to her now?" I asked, though I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to know the answer. Patricia Chen, who had just joined the meeting, spoke up from her position near the window. "Vanessa Hartwell's employment was terminated yesterday afternoon. She was escorted from the building after a brief meeting where she was confronted with the evidence of her deception. She initially attempted to deny the allegations, claiming the work was collaborative, or that she had permission to use your materials. But when faced with the technical evidence, the metadata, and the client testimonials that specifically referenced your work," Marcus Rodriguez shook his head. "Her story fell apart completely. She eventually admitted to what she termed borrowing your portfolio for the application, though she continued to minimize the seriousness of her actions." Diana Blackwood leaned forward, her attention focused entirely on me. "Which brings us to why you're here today. The creative director position is still available, and based on our review of your actual qualifications and portfolio, you were clearly the most qualified candidate we interviewed. The moment I'd been working toward for months was finally here, but it felt complicated by everything that had led to this point. I'm very interested in the position, but I want to make sure we can move forward professionally despite the unusual circumstances. That's exactly what we need to discuss." Diana Blackwood consulted her notes. "First, we want to ensure you understand that your sister's actions in no way reflect on our perception of your character or professionalism. Second, we need to address the practical implications of this situation for your potential employment here. Marcus Rodriguez explained the concerns. There may be ongoing legal proceedings related to your sister's deception. She signed employment agreements containing specific clauses about fraudulent representation. While those matters are separate from your employment, we want to ensure you're comfortable with the potential for continued attention to this case. I'd already considered this possibility. I understand there may be legal consequences for identity theft and fraud. I'm prepared to cooperate fully with any investigation or proceedings, and I don't expect special treatment because of family relationship. Patricia Chen nodded approvingly. We also need to discuss the team dynamics. Several employees worked with your sister during her brief tenure here. They'll need to understand what happened and why, both for closure and to prevent any confusion about your qualifications versus hers. I'm willing to address that directly with the team, I replied. I think transparency about the situation will be more effective than trying to pretend it never happened. Diana Blackwood smiled, for the first time since the meeting began. That's exactly the kind of mature professional response we were hoping to hear. She opened another folder, this one containing what appeared to be an employment contract. We'd like to offer you the creative director position at a salary of $95,000 annually, with full benefits, 4 weeks paid vacation, and a signing bonus of $10,000 to compensate for the inconvenience you've experienced. The offer was more generous than I'd expected, reflecting both the value they placed on my actual qualifications, and perhaps some recognition of the unusual circumstances. That's very generous. When would you like me to start? As soon as possible. We have several client projects that were disrupted by yesterday's events, and we need someone who can step in immediately and reassure our clients that their accounts are being handled by genuine expertise. We spent the next hour discussing specific responsibilities, reporting structures, and expectations for the role. The Morrison Industries account would indeed be my first major project, along with 2 other clients who had been promised innovative data visualization strategies. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd be delivering exactly what Vanessa had promised but couldn't possibly have provided. As the meeting concluded, Marcus Rodriguez handed me a comprehensive benefits package and orientation schedule. We'll announce your appointment internally this afternoon, and to our clients tomorrow. We want to be completely transparent about the change in leadership, and the reasons for it.
Walking out of Pinnacle's offices as their new creative director felt surreal. 3 days ago, I'd been a data analyst watching my sister steal my identity. Now I was stepping into the position that should have been mine from the beginning, with an enhanced reputation for integrity and professionalism. My phone had been buzzing throughout the meeting, but I'd kept it silenced out of respect for the proceedings. Now checking the messages, I found a series of increasingly frantic texts from Vanessa, along with missed calls from my parents and several industry contacts who had apparently heard about the situation through Portland's tight-knit marketing community. Vanessa's messages progressed from confusion to anger to desperation. I don't understand what's happening. Someone is sabotaging me with lies. How could you do this to your own sister? I need you to call Pinnacle and explain that this is all a misunderstanding. Please, Zoe, my career is ruined. The final message was the most telling. I know you're behind this. I know you couldn't stand seeing me succeed for once. Are you happy now? Even in the face of irrefutable evidence of her deception, Vanessa was positioning herself as the victim and me as the jealous sibling who had destroyed her dreams. The complete lack of accountability was almost impressive in its audacity. I didn't respond to her messages. Instead, I called Tyler Nash to share the news about my new position. His reaction was a mixture of excitement for my success and concern about the family implications. This is incredible news, Zoe, but are you prepared for the fallout with your family? Identity theft accusations between siblings. That's going to leave permanent scars. He was right, of course. This wasn't just a professional matter anymore. It was a family crisis that would affect relationships and dynamics for years to come. But I'd reached a point where protecting my career and reputation had to take priority over maintaining family peace. The truth needed to come out, Tyler. If Vanessa had succeeded with this deception, she would have destroyed my credibility in the industry. Every technique she taught, every innovation she claimed, every client she worked with would have been associated with her name, not mine. I get it, I really do, but your parents are going to have a hard time understanding why you couldn't handle this privately within the family. That afternoon brought the expected phone call from my mother. Her voice was a mixture of confusion, disappointment, and protective anger. Zoe, what have you done? Vanessa is devastated.
She's saying you sabotaged her job with false accusations. I'd prepared for this conversation, but it was still painful to navigate. Mom, Vanessa stole my portfolio, my client testimonials, even my professional photographs to get that job. She committed identity theft and fraud. This wasn't a misunderstanding or sibling rivalry. But surely you could have worked it out between yourselves. Did you have to involve her employer? Now she's been fired and she's saying there might be legal consequences. The disappointment in my mother's voice was crushing, but I forced myself to remain firm. She didn't just borrow my resume, Mom. She constructed an entire fake professional identity using my work. If I hadn't exposed this, she would have continued deceiving clients and colleagues while destroying my reputation in the process. My mother was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more uncertain. I don't understand how it got to this point. How did she even get copies of your work? How did she know enough about your field to fool professionals? The questions I'd been asking myself for days. She's been asking about my work for months, claiming she was interested in my career. I gave her access to my portfolio, explained my techniques, even shared client feedback because I thought we were finally connecting as adults. Oh, honey, my mother's voice broke slightly. I'm so sorry. I had no idea she would. I never thought she was capable of something like this. Neither did I, Mom, but the evidence is overwhelming. Pinnacle conducted their own investigation and confirmed everything. This wasn't a personal attack, it was protecting my professional integrity. We talked for another 20 minutes, with my mother gradually coming to terms with the reality of what Vanessa had done. By the end of the conversation, her tone had shifted from protective anger to sorrowful acceptance. What happens now? Between you and Vanessa, I mean. I don't know. That's up to her. If she can acknowledge what she did and take responsibility for it, maybe we can eventually rebuild some kind of relationship. But if she continues to deny reality and blame me for the consequences of her actions, I didn't finish the sentence. We both understood what that would mean for our family dynamics. That evening, I received an unexpected visitor. Vanessa was waiting in the lobby of my building when I returned from dinner, her eyes red from crying, and her usual polished appearance replaced by rumpled clothes and disheveled hair. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. I considered refusing, sending her away until emotions had cooled and rational conversation was possible. But looking at her face, I realized this might be the only opportunity to understand how we'd reached this point. "Okay, but we talk in the lobby. This is a public conversation." We sat in the modern seating area near the windows, the city lights creating a backdrop for what would be one of the most difficult conversations of my life. Vanessa was quiet for several minutes, seemingly gathering her thoughts or perhaps her courage. "I never meant for it to go this far," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It started as just borrowing a few pieces for the application. I thought if I could just get the interview, I could learn what I needed to know once I got the job." The admission was both relieving and infuriating. She was finally acknowledging the deception, but her reasoning showed a fundamental misunderstanding of professional expertise and responsibility. "Vanessa, you can't just learn advanced data visualization and strategic marketing on the job. These are skills that take years to develop. You were planning to fake competency in areas where mistakes could cost clients millions of dollars. I know that now." She wiped her eyes with a crumpled tissue. "But I was desperate. I've been struggling for years, watching all my friends build careers while I jumped from one FIP attack to another. When I saw how successful you were, how respected you were in your field, I just wanted a piece of that for myself." The explanation provided context but not justification. "So you decided to steal my achievements instead of building your own." I convinced myself it was temporary, that I'd find a way to make it legitimate. Once I was established, but then the job was so perfect. And everyone was so impressed with my work. "Your work." It felt like I was finally becoming the person I was supposed to be. This was the heart of the delusion. Vanessa had genuinely believed that wearing my professional identity would somehow transform her into me. She'd confused external validation with actual competence, recognition with expertise. But it wasn't you, Vanessa, it was never you. Every compliment you received, every project you were assigned, every moment of professional respect was based on work I'd done and skills I'd developed. You were living a lie. I know, the words came out as barely a whisper. And now everyone knows it too. My friends, our parents, everyone in the Portland marketing community. I'll never be able to work in this field again. The consequences were indeed severe, but they were the natural result of her choices. You're right. You probably won't be able to work in marketing or any field where trust and credibility are essential. But that's not because I exposed you. It's because you chose to build your career on deception. We sat in silence for several more minutes, the weight of damaged relationships and destroyed trust settling between. When Vanessa spoke again, her voice carried a note of genuine remorse that I hadn't heard before. I'm sorry, Zoe. I'm sorry for stealing your work, for lying to everyone, for putting you in a position where you had to choose between protecting your career and protecting our relationship. I know I've lost your trust, probably forever. The apology was what I'd been hoping to hear, but it came too late to repair the damage that had been done. I appreciate that, Vanessa, but sorry doesn't undo the harm you caused or rebuild the reputation you damaged. I know I'm going to have to live with the consequences of what I did. She stood up slowly, gathering her purse and coat. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you, and why you had to fight back. As she walked toward the exit, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. The confrontation I'd been dreading was over, and while it hadn't provided the dramatic resolution I might have expected, it had offered something more valuable: acknowledgement of the truth and acceptance of responsibility. My phone buzzed with a text message from Diana looking forward to having you join the Pinnacle team next Monday. Your first client meeting is scheduled for Tuesday with Morrison Industries. Welcome aboard. The future I'd worked so hard to build was finally within reach, earned through genuine expertise and unwavering commitment to integrity. The path had been more complicated than I'd ever imagined, but the destination made every difficult decision worthwhile. Monday morning arrived with the familiar Portland mist that made the city feel like it was emerging from a dream. I stood in front of my selecting clothes for my first day as Pinnacle's creative director, and marveled at how dramatically my life had changed in less than a week. The burgundy dress and matching blazer. I chose projected confidence and competence, qualities I would need in abundance, as I navigated the complex dynamics of stepping into a role that had been so publicly vacated. The commute to Pinnacle's offices felt different now that I was heading there as an employee rather than a petitioner seeking justice. The building's glass facade reflected the morning light, and for the first time I could imagine myself as part of the bustling professional ecosystem within those walls. Security had already updated their system with my employee credentials, and the badge they handed me felt substantial and in a way that made the entire experience tangible. Marcus Rodriguez met me in the lobby at precisely 8 o'clock, his expression warm but businesslike. We rode the elevator to the 20th floor while he briefed me on the day's agenda: a team meeting with the creative staff, individual introductions to key department heads, and a comprehensive overview of current client accounts that would now fall under my supervision. I want to prepare you for some potentially awkward moments today, he said, as we approached the creative department. Several team members worked directly with Vanessa during her brief tenure here. They're understandably confused about the rapid change in leadership and curious about the circumstances that led to it. The creative department occupied a large open space with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered spectacular views of the Willamette River. Individual workstations were arranged in clusters that encouraged collaboration, while providing enough privacy for focused work. The morning light streaming through the windows illuminated a space that was both professional and creative. Exactly the kind of environment where I could envision producing my best work. 8 employees were gathered around a large conference table in the center of the space, their expressions ranging from curious to cautious. Marcus Rodriguez had clearly prepared them for this meeting, but I could sense the underlying tension that came from having their new supervisor change twice in 1 week. Under mysterious circumstances, everyone, Marcus announced, I'd like you to meet Zoe Hartwell, our new creative director. Zoe brings 5 years of experience in data analysis and creative strategy, with a particular expertise in data visualization and digital marketing campaigns. I stepped forward, my portfolio case in hand, prepared for the conversation I'd been rehearsing since accepting the position. Good morning, everyone. I know this situation, and I want to address it directly rather than letting rumors and speculation create confusion. Jennifer Walsh, a senior graphic designer with vibrant purple hair, spoke up first. We heard that Vanessa had to leave suddenly due to some kind of background check issue. Is that related to your hire? The question was direct and deserved an equally straightforward answer. Vanessa Hartwell is my sister, and she obtained this position by using my portfolio, my client testimonials, and my professional credentials without my knowledge or permission. When I discovered the identity theft, I reported it to HR, and after their investigation confirmed the fraud, she was terminated. The silence that followed was profound. I watched as the implications sank in, as team members processed the fact that they'd been working with someone who had no legitimate qualifications for the position it held. David Chen, a junior designer who appeared to be in his early 20s, raised his hand tentatively. So the workshop she was supposed to give us about advanced data visualization techniques would have been impossible for her to deliver authentically. I completed the thought. Those techniques were developed through my work over the past 5 years. I'd be happy to present that workshop once I've had time to settle into the role and assess the team's current skill levels and interests. Sarah Martinez, who introduced herself as the department's project coordinator, looked troubled. This is really disturbing. She seemed so not. When we discussed upcoming projects, she spoke about client relationships and industry trends with such confidence. Confidence based on stolen information, I replied gently. She had access to my client files, my project summaries, and my strategic analysis. She could discuss those topics because she was essentially reading from my work, not because she understood the underlying principles. The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, with team members asking questions about specific interactions they'd had with Vanessa, trying to reconcile the competent professional they'd met with the reality of her deception. Several employees expressed concern about their own reputations being associated with someone who had committed professional fraud. I understand your concerns, I assured them, but none of you had any way of knowing about the deception. Your professionalism and integrity aren't in question here. What matters now is moving forward and rebuilding trust with our clients, who may have been affected by this situation. After the team meeting, Marcus Rodriguez walked me to my new office, a corner space with windows facing both the river and the downtown skyline. The previous occupant had left the space completely clean, with no personal items or decorative touches to suggest it had ever been inhabited. Vanessa's brief tenure had ended so abruptly that she'd apparently had no opportunity to make the space her own. The Morrison Industries presentation is tomorrow afternoon, Marcus reminded me. I examined the built-in bookshelves and modern desk setup. They're expecting to see the innovative data visualization approach that was promised during the initial pitch meetings. This was exactly the kind of challenge I'd been preparing for throughout my career. Morrison Industries was a major retail client, with complex data analysis needs and high expectations for creative solutions. The pitch that had originally won their account had been based on my stolen portfolio, but now I had the opportunity to deliver authentic expertise that would exceed their expectations. I'll need access to their current data sets and any preliminary analysis that's already been completed, I said, settling into the ergonomic office chair that would be my command center for the foreseeable future. Everything is ready for your review. Patricia Chen from Legal also wanted to speak with you about the Morrison account specifically, given the circumstances of how it was originally acquired. The legal implications of client relationships built on fraudulent credentials were complex and potentially costly. If Morrison Industries decided they couldn't trust Pinnacle after learning about the deception, the account could be lost entirely along with the substantial revenue it represented. My first task was reviewing the Morrison Industries file in detail, understanding not just their data analysis needs, but also the specific promises that had been made during the pitch process. The original presentation materials were sophisticated and compelling, featuring advanced visualization techniques that I recognized as adaptations of my own proprietary methods. Vanessa had somehow obtained not just my completed work samples but also my strategic frameworks and analytical approaches. The level of preparation required to steal this information suggested much of planning, not a spontaneous decision to borrow a few portfolio pieces for a single job application. The Morrison presentation that Vanessa had been scheduled to deliver was scheduled for the following afternoon, and I spent the rest of Monday completely rebuilding it from the ground up. Rather than simply correcting her work, I wanted to create something entirely new that would demonstrate authentic expertise while addressing any concerns about the reliability of previous materials. By 5 o'clock, I had constructed a comprehensive analysis of Morrison's retail data that identified patterns and opportunities their previous consultants had missed entirely. The visualization techniques I incorporated were evolved versions of my standard approaches, adapted specifically for the industry and business model. As I prepared to leave for the day, my computer chimed with an email from Diana Blackwood. Zoe had been reviewing your preliminary work on the Morrison account, and I'm impressed by both the depth of analysis and the innovative presentation approach. This is exactly the kind of authentic expertise we were hoping to see. Looking forward to tomorrow, the validation felt wonderful, but more importantly, confirmed that I was capable of exceeding the expectations that had been set by my stolen credential. This wasn't just about reclaiming what had been taken from me. It was about demonstrating that my actual abilities surpassed even the impressive portfolio that Vanessa had appropriated. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected complication.
Tyler Nash called as I was reviewing my presentation materials one final time, his voice carrying a note of concern that immediately put me on alert. Zoe, I don't know how to tell you this, but Vanessa has been reaching out to people in the industry. She's claiming that you sabotaged her career out of jealousy and that the identity theft accusations are false. The news was disturbing but not entirely surprising. Vanessa's inability to accept responsibility for her actions had been evident during our conversation in my lobby, and her desperation to salvage her reputation would naturally lead to attempts to discredit my version of events. What exactly is she telling people? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. She's saying that you collaborated on the portfolio pieces, that she had permission to use them, and that you withdrew that permission after she got the job you wanted. She's positioning it as a family dispute that got blown out of proportion. The strategy was clever in its simplicity. By framing the situation as a misunderstanding between siblings rather than outright fraud, Vanessa could appeal to people's natural reluctance to get involved in family conflicts. The narrative also painted her as the victim of my vindictive behavior rather than the perpetrator of identity theft. Tyler, you've seen the technical evidence. The metadata, the creation dates, the client testimonials. You know those weren't collaborative pieces. I know that, and anyone who examines the evidence objectively will reach the same conclusion. But not everyone is going to investigate that thoroughly. Some people are going to hear her version first and make judgments based on incomplete information. This was a complication I hadn't fully anticipated. While Pinnacle's investigation had been thorough and conclusive, the broader professional community would be relying on second-hand information and industry gossip to form their opinions. Vanessa's alternative narrative could potentially damage my reputation even as I worked to rebuild it. What do you think I should do? I asked. Focus on your work at Pinnacle. Do such an outstanding job that your professional competence becomes undeniable. Let your actual achievements speak for themselves rather than getting drawn into a public argument with your sister. The advice was sound, and it aligned with my own instincts about handling the situation. Engaging in a public dispute with Vanessa would only amplify the controversy and potentially make me look petty or vindictive. Better to demonstrate my capabilities through excellent work and let the results speak for themselves. The Morrison Industries presentation that afternoon would be my first opportunity to prove that I could deliver on the promises that had been made using my stolen credentials. Their executive team included CEO Robert Morrison, CFO Linda Hayes, and Marketing Director James Park, all of whom had been involved in the original decision to hire Pinnacle for this project. Diana Blackwood introduced me to the Morrison team with careful attention to the circumstances that had led to the change in project leadership. As I mentioned in our phone conversation yesterday, we've made a change in the creative director role. Zoe Hartwell will be leading your account going forward, and her expertise in data visualization and strategic analysis makes her ideally suited for this project. Robert Morrison, a heavy-set man in his 60s with shrewd eyes and a direct manner, cut straight to the heart of the matter. Miss Blackwood, we're concerned about the continuity of service given the unusual circumstances you've described. How can we be confident that the innovative approaches we were promised will still be delivered? This was the question I'd been preparing to answer. Morrison, I understand your concerns about continuity, and I want to address them directly. The visualization techniques and analytical frameworks that were presented in your original proposal were actually developed from my work over the past 5 years. What I'm presenting today isn't just a continuation of what was promised, it's an enhanced version based on the most current data and refined methodologies. I activated the presentation system and began walking them through my analysis of their retail data. Within the first few slides, it became clear that my approach was significantly more sophisticated than what they had been expecting. The visualizations were cleaner, the insights were deeper, and the strategic recommendations were more actionable than anything they'd seen from previous consultants. James Park leaned forward as I demonstrated how seasonal purchasing patterns could be mapped against demographic data to predict inventory needs with unprecedented accuracy. This level of granular analysis is exactly what we've been looking for. How quickly can you implement these systems across all our regional locations? The presentation continued for another hour, with the Morrison team becoming increasingly engaged as I demonstrated technique after technique that could revolutionize their approach to inventory management, customer segmentation, and marketing campaign optimization. By the end of the session, their initial concerns about leadership changes had been completely overshadowed by excitement about the possibilities I was presenting. Linda Hayes, the CFO, was particularly interested in the cost savings implications of the predictive analytics I'd developed. If these projections are accurate, we could reduce inventory carrying costs by 15 to 20% while actually improving customer satisfaction through better stock availability. That's a conservative estimate based on implementation at similar retail operations. I replied, with Morrison's scale and market position, I believe the improvements could be even more significant. As the meeting concluded, Robert Morrison stood and extended his hand with a genuine smile. Miss Hartwell, I have to say this presentation far exceeded our expectations. Whatever concerns we had about the change in leadership have been completely resolved. When can we begin implementation? The success of the Morrison presentation established my credibility within Pinnacle and demonstrated to our clients that the change in creative director represented an upgrade in expertise rather than a disruption in service. Diana Blackwood was effusive in her praise, noting that my approach had not only met the promises made in the original proposal, but had substantially exceeded them. Over the following weeks, I threw myself into the work with an intensity born of both professional passion and personal vindication. Each successful project, each satisfied client, each innovation I introduced served as evidence that my reputation had been built on genuine competence rather than stolen credentials. The Morrison Industries implementation proceeded flawlessly, with their executive team so impressed by the results that they expanded the scope of our contract to include additional retail locations and new analytical capabilities. Other clients took notice of the enhanced service quality, and Pinnacle began receiving referrals and inquiries that could be directly attributed to the improved expertise in the creative director role. But even as my professional life flourished, the personal consequences of exposing Vanessa's deception continued to reverberate through my family and social circles. My parents remained conflicted about the situation, understanding intellectually that I'd had no choice but to protect my career while struggling emotionally with the destruction of relationships between their daughters. 3 weeks after starting at Pinnacle, I received a call from Patricia Chen in legal that would add another dimension to an already complex situation. Vanessa was facing potential criminal charges for identity theft and fraud, and the case might require my testimony in formal proceedings. The district attorney's office has been reviewing the evidence we provided, Patricia explained. Given the sophistication of the deception and the financial damages involved, they're considering prosecution for felony fraud charges. The prospect of criminal proceedings was sobering. What had begun as a professional dispute was escalating into a legal matter that could result in serious consequences for Vanessa, including potential jail time and permanent criminal record implications. What does this mean for me and for Pinnacle? I asked. For you personally, it means you may be called to testify about the theft of your intellectual property and professional identity. For Pinnacle, it demonstrates that we take these matters seriously and that we're committed to maintaining the highest standards of professional integrity. That evening, I sat in my Pearl District loft, looking out at the city lights and reflecting on how completely my life had changed. 4 weeks ago, I'd been a talented but under-recognized data analyst, struggling to advance my career while watching my sister drift through various artistic pursuits. Now I was a successful creative director at one of Portland's most prestigious marketing firms, with a reputation for innovation and integrity that was attracting attention throughout the industry. But the personal cost had been enormous. My relationship with Vanessa was probably damaged beyond repair. My parents were struggling to understand how their family had reached this point, and the Portland marketing community was watching to see how the situation would ultimately resolve itself.
The vindication I'd sought had been achieved, but it had come at a price that sometimes felt almost too high to bear. Success built on the ruins of family relationships felt hollow in ways I hadn't anticipated when I'd first decided to expose Vanessa's deception. Yet as I reviewed the Morrison Industries quarterly report that showed a 23% improvement in inventory efficiency directly attributable to my analytical innovations, I knew that I'd made the right choice. Protecting my professional integrity hadn't just been about personal vindication, it had been about ensuring that expertise and hard work were properly recognized and rewarded. The future stretched ahead with possibilities that had seemed impossible just weeks earlier. Morrison Industries was discussing a long-term strategic partnership that could establish Pinnacle as their primary analytics consultant for national expansion. Other clients were requesting similar comprehensive data analysis services, creating opportunities for growth that could benefit the entire creative team. My phone buzzed with a text message from Tyler Nash. Just heard through the grapevine that you're being considered for the Portland Marketing Association's Innovation Award for your Morrison Industries work. Congratulations on turning this whole nightmare into a career triumph. Recognition from my professional peers represented the ultimate validation of my decision to expose Vanessa's deception and fight for my reputation. The award consideration was based purely on the quality and impact of my work, with no connection to the dramatic circumstances that had led to my current position. 6 months had passed since that fateful evening, when I discovered my own face staring back at me from Vanessa's fraudulent LinkedIn profile. The Portland Marketing Association's annual gala was being held at the historic Multnomah Athletic Club, and I stood before my full-length mirror adjusting the emerald green gown I'd chosen for the occasion. Tonight I would officially receive the Innovation Award for my Morrison Industries project, a recognition that represented far more than professional achievement. The award ceremony would mark the culmination of a journey that had transformed me from an overlooked data analyst into one of Portland's most respected creative strategists. More importantly, it would demonstrate conclusively that genuine expertise and ethical behavior ultimately triumph over deception and shortcuts. Diana Blackwood had insisted on attending the ceremony as my guest, along with Marcus Rodriguez and several members of my creative team. Their support had been unwavering throughout the challenging months of rebuilding my reputation and establishing Pinnacle's enhanced market position. The Morrison Industries' success had led to 3 additional major client acquisitions, each attracted specifically by the innovative analytical approaches that were now synonymous with my name rather than my sister's stolen identity. The drive to the Multnomah Athletic Club took me through downtown Portland's gleaming business district, where Pinnacle's offices now occupied expanded space to accommodate our growing client base. The irony wasn't lost on me that Vanessa's attempt to steal my career had ultimately accelerated my professional advancement beyond what might have been possible through conventional means. Tyler Nash was waiting in the club's elegant lobby, resplendent in a classic black tuxedo that complemented his usual professional demeanor. His presence at the ceremony felt particularly meaningful, given his role as the first industry colleague to recognize the impossibility of Vanessa's claimed credentials. His support during the darkest moments of the scandal had been invaluable. "You clean up pretty well for someone who spends most of her time buried in spreadsheets," he teased, offering his arm as we walked toward the main ballroom. The ballroom was magnificent, with crystal chandeliers casting warm light over hundreds of Portland's marketing professionals. I recognized faces from across the industry, people who had followed the story of my sister's deception with varying degrees of fascination and concern. Tonight would be my opportunity to definitively close that chapter and establish my reputation based purely on merit and achievement. Patricia Chen from Pinnacle's legal department approached our table during the cocktail hour, her expression carrying news that I could tell was significant. "Zoe, I wanted to update you on the legal proceedings before the ceremony begins. Vanessa accepted a plea agreement this afternoon." The news was both expected and anticlimactic. After months of legal maneuvering, Vanessa had finally acknowledged the futility of fighting charges backed by overwhelming technical evidence. The plea agreement would likely involve restitution, community service and probation rather than jail time, but it would also create a permanent criminal record that would follow her indefinitely. "How do you feel about that outcome?" Patricia asked. The question required careful consideration. Justice had been served in the legal sense, but the personal satisfaction I'd expected to feel was overshadowed by sadness about the destruction of family relationships and the waste of Vanessa's potential. "I think it's appropriate." She needs to face consequences for her actions, but I never wanted to see her life completely destroyed. Marcus Rodriguez joined our conversation, his attention focused on the broader implications for Pinnacle and the marketing community. The case has become something of a cautionary tale in HR circles. We've had several companies reach out asking about our enhanced background verification procedures. The scandal had indeed prompted industry-wide discussions about professional credential verification and the vulnerabilities that had allowed Vanessa's deception to succeed initially. Pinnacle had implemented new protocols that included technical competency testing and direct client reference verification, measures that would prevent similar fraud in the future. As dinner concluded and the award presentations began, I found myself reflecting on the complicated legacy of the past 6 months. My professional achievements had been extraordinary by any measure, but they were forever intertwined with the circumstances that had created the opportunities. The Morrison Industries project that was about to be recognized tonight existed only because Vanessa's fraud had created the opening for me to demonstrate my capabilities. Portland Marketing Association President Sarah Williams took the podium to introduce the Innovation Award category. This year's recipient has demonstrated exceptional creativity in data visualization and strategic analysis, delivering measurable results that have set new standards for client service excellence. The presentation video that followed showcased the Morrison Industries transformation, highlighting the 23% improvement in inventory efficiency and the subsequent expansion of their partnership with Pinnacle. My proprietary analytical techniques were demonstrated through animated graphics that made complex data relationships accessible to general audiences. The recipient of this year's Innovation Award has not only delivered outstanding results for her clients, but has also elevated the professional standards of our entire industry through her commitment to ethical practices and authentic expertise. Please join me in congratulating Zoe Hartwell of Pinnacle Digital Solutions. The applause was sustained and genuine. As I made my way to the podium, the weight of the Crystal Award in my hands serving as tangible validation of everything I'd worked to achieve. Looking out at the audience of industry professionals, I saw faces that represented years of networking, collaboration, and mutual respect built on honest foundations. Thank you for this incredible honor. I began, my voice steady despite the emotional magnitude of the moment. This award represents not just individual achievement, but the power of authentic expertise and ethical professional practices. I spoke about the importance of integrity in an industry built on trust and credibility, about the value of genuine innovation over borrowed credentials, and about the responsibility we all shared to maintain professional standards that protected both clients and colleagues. The speech was carefully crafted to acknowledge the challenges I'd overcome without dwelling on the personal drama that had made those challenges necessary. The reception following the ceremony provided opportunities for conversations that would have seemed impossible 6 months earlier. Industry leaders who had previously known me only peripherally now sought my insights on data analysis trends and strategic marketing innovations. The respect I'd earned was based entirely on demonstrated competence rather than inherited connections or borrowed achievements. Robert Morrison, the CEO whose account had become the foundation of my enhanced reputation, approached me near the end of the evening with a proposal that would fundamentally reshape my career trajectory. Zoe, I've been discussing your work with my board of directors, and we'd like to explore the possibility of bringing you in as a consultant for our national expansion initiative. The opportunity he described would involve analyzing retail markets across 12 states, developing predictive models for new store locations, and creating data visualization systems that could be implemented across Morrison Industries' entire corporate structure. The scope and complexity of the project represented exactly the kind of challenge I'd been preparing for throughout my career. That sounds incredible, Mr. Morrison. I'd be very interested in discussing the details. Excellent. We're talking about a 2-year consulting agreement with the potential for permanent strategic advisory role. The compensation would be substantial, and the professional exposure could establish you as a national expert in retail analytics. As the evening concluded and I made my way back to my Pearl District loft, I carried with me not just the Crystal Award that symbolized professional recognition, but also a business card that could represent the next phase of my career evolution. The Morrison Industries opportunity would provide financial security and professional advancement that exceeded anything I'd imagined possible during those dark days of discovering Vanessa's betrayal. My phone contained several missed calls and text messages, most from colleagues and industry contacts offering congratulations on the award. One message, however, came from an unexpected source. My mother had sent a simple text: "Saw the award ceremony coverage on the news. Very proud of you. Dad sends his love too." The message represented the first positive communication I'd received from my parents since the scandal had destroyed the family dynamics we'd all taken for granted. Their gradual acceptance of my decision to expose Vanessa's fraud and their recognition of my subsequent achievements offered hope that some relationships could eventually be rebuilt on more honest foundations. The following Monday brought a call from Patricia Chen with news that would finally close the legal chapter of this saga. The restitution hearing has been scheduled for next month, and Vanessa's attorney has indicated she wants to make a personal statement to you as part of the process. The prospect of facing Vanessa again in a formal legal setting was daunting, but I recognized the importance of completing this process comprehensively. What kind of statement? Typically, these are acknowledgments of harm caused and expressions of remorse. It's part of the restorative justice component of the plea agreement. You're not required to participate, but it might provide closure for both of you. The decision required careful consideration of both emotional and practical factors. Seeing Vanessa again would inevitably be difficult, but it might also provide the final resolution needed to move forward completely. I'll participate. I think we both need that closure. 3 weeks later, I sat in a downtown courthouse conference room across from Vanessa for the first time since our confrontation in my apartment lobby. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by months of legal proceedings and social ostracism. Her attorney, a professional woman in her 50s, had prepared her for this moment, but the words she spoke came across as genuinely felt rather than legally mandated. "Zoe, I want you to know that I understand now what I took from you. It wasn't just work samples or credentials. I stole years of your effort, your creativity, your reputation. I tried to become you professionally because I was too afraid and too lazy to become myself." The acknowledgement was more comprehensive than I'd expected, addressing not just the technical aspects of the identity theft but the deeper violation of trust and relationship. "I also want you to know that seeing what you've accomplished since then, the way you've built something even better than what I tried to steal, has made me realize how much potential I wasted by taking shortcuts instead of doing the work. What are your plans now?" I asked, genuinely curious about how she intended to rebuild her life after this experience. "I'm enrolled in community college, taking business courses and learning skills legitimately this time. It's harder than I thought it would be, but it feels honest in a way nothing has felt for years." She paused, gathering courage for what came next. "I know we can't go back to being sisters the way we were before, but someday maybe we can find a way to be family again." The conversation lasted another 20 minutes, covering practical matters of restitution and the ongoing consequences of her actions. By its conclusion, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: genuine hope that healing was possible, even if it would take years to achieve. Walking out of the courthouse that afternoon, I realized that the most important victory hadn't been professional recognition or career advancement. It had been the preservation of my integrity and the demonstration that authentic achievement ultimately outweighs any temporary success built on deception. The Morrison Industries consulting agreement was signed the following week, officially launching the next phase of my career as an independent strategic consultant with national scope and recognition. The 2-year contract would provide financial security while allowing me to build a consulting practice that could eventually expand beyond retail analytics into other industries and applications. Diana Blackwood had been gracious about my transition from Pinnacle employee to independent consultant, recognizing that the Morrison opportunity represented advancement that benefited everyone involved. Pinnacle would serve as my primary operational base, providing administrative support and collaborative resources, while allowing me to pursue larger strategic projects. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone involved. Vanessa's attempt to steal my career had ultimately accelerated my professional development and created opportunities that might never have emerged through conventional career progression. Her deception had forced me to fight for recognition in ways that had elevated my profile throughout the industry. 6 months after receiving the Innovation Award, I stood once again in my Pearl District loft, but this time I was packing for a business trip to Chicago, where Morrison Industries was opening their first Midwest distribution center. The analytical models I'd developed were being implemented across their entire national operation, and my techniques were becoming industry standards that other retailers were seeking to license and adapt. My relationship with my parents had gradually improved as they witnessed my professional success and began to understand the necessity of my actions in exposing Vanessa's fraud. Family dinners had resumed, though they were more thoughtful and honest conversations than the superficial gatherings of the past. Vanessa and I exchanged birthday cards and occasional texts, carefully rebuilding trust through small gestures and consistent honesty. She was making progress in her legitimate educational pursuits, and while our relationship would never return to its former closeness, it was evolving into something more mature and authentic. The Portland marketing community had moved on to other scandals and success stories, but my reputation as someone who valued integrity over convenience had become a permanent part of my professional identity. Clients sought me out specifically because they trusted that my expertise was genuine, and my recommendations were based on authentic analysis rather than borrowed insights. Looking back on that evening when I'd first discovered my stolen identity on LinkedIn, I could hardly believe how completely my life had been transformed. The journey from victimization to vindication had been more challenging and more rewarding than anything I'd previously experienced. Most importantly, it had proven that truth and competence ultimately prevail, even when the path to justice seems impossible to navigate. The future stretched ahead with possibilities that seemed limitless, built on a foundation of genuine achievement and authentic expertise that could never be stolen or replicated. That was the most valuable lesson of all. Real success must be earned, not taken, and when it's built on truth, it becomes unshakable. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.